I put the parameters in place, and you took a chance on yourself.
And honestly, I feel like we've all had that moment in our lives. No matter how old we are, we can think back to, ooh, yeah, I saw things I shouldn't have been, I should have stayed where they told me to stay. But yeah. So I get that. This is incredible. So let's talk for a few minutes about the Afrosexual movement. I know this is a major bit of work that you're passionate about and creating in the world for the world. So please share with us about what that is and what you're bringing.
So years ago, when the Living Room Project was part of Oakland, it was a healing space here in West Oakland. Micah Hobbs Frazier let me use that space to create this event called Afrosexual, and it's a conversation. It's where we get together with other Black people and have candid conversations about sex and sexuality. And one of the things that I wanted to do with that conversation is I was having a lot of sideline conversations with people who were not having a great sex life. Men were complaining, women were complaining. Everybody was complaining about what they weren't getting, what they need, what they're not getting, and they're not talking to each other. I'm like, let's bring people together and have conversations. And then there was this whole conversation around what's Black sex, what's white sex, what we should be doing, what we should be doing, that kind of stuff. I wanted to demystify BDSM. I want to demystify kink. I want to demystify anal sex. I want to demystify like all these things. We put these oppressions on ourselves that initially came from our oppressor, but religion and other constructs like form these ideas around sexuality on what you should and should not do and what you can and cannot do. And so these conversations was like breaking that down, dispelling that, blowing those things out the water. Like I really wanted to have conversations with people and say, the fact that you like this is okay. And like having real conversation and normalizing pleasure for people, because pleasure is different for everybody. What I like, you don't like. What you don't like, I like. And so I wanted to be like, let's get to this idea where we don't yuck other people's yums. Like that's what really turns you on and turns you out. Like that's beautiful. And what turns me on and turns me out is these other things. And like just holding space for that. So that's what Afrosexual is initially. It's a conversation about candid sexuality. And then the movement is where we keep this conversation going and we keep normalizing and supporting people in what they're into, so that we can end sexual oppression. And sexual oppression comes from it can come from all walks of life. Like even in the queer community, I've saw these ideas where certain people in the queer community were like, well, I'm a this, so I can only do these things, or I only have, I don't know. I'm not only want to go down that rabbit hole, but it was just some frigidity and some rigidness around sexuality, even in the queer community. I was like, what? You guys are oppressed here too? God damn. I thought this is where we go to freedom. Like I went to Pride for 20 years straight, talking about let's be free. And then you get in relationships with people and they're like, oh, I can't do that. I can't do that. I ain't doing that. You can't do that. I was like, oh, man, this is what I get in the straight world. I thought this is where I get to be free. And I was like, nah, man, we got to start having more conversations with each other. We got to knock this shit down. Like, this is not cool to still be policing people's sexuality. Like, let's stop this. You don't have to like it, but if that person does, you should honor and respect it. And that's really what the Afrosexual movement is. It's getting people out of this mindset of sexual oppression with each other.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you. Thank you for the work that you're doing with Afrosexual. It's so intrinsic to expanding the conversation that I'm looking at here. And to be completely candid, that is why the It Cast exists. It's about increasing diversity in these conversations around health and sexuality. So looking at it, as if it were cultural aptitude, I look at some of my, friends and colleagues that come from a primarily white Caucasian background. And they're like, what do you mean? Like they have a different level of agency because of the lack of certain types of oppression, not all oppression, because I think we all, and not even I know we all go through things, but culturally there are certain aptitudes. I think regionally there are certain aptitudes, you know, depending on whether you live in a place that has a lot of resources or a place that does not have a lot of resources, what your parents got, what their parents got. I mean, it does affect how you're able to operate in this conversation. So bringing it from that space of like, culturally, what is it that's affecting you, and how can you have more agency in your life so that you can be more free, more self-expressed, and experience less shame overall, is really what I'm hearing at the heart of this work. And especially in the Black and brown community, it's like, for Black people, there are so many things, you know, don't yuck the yums. Like, you don't even know what your own yums could be if you got those guards and barriers and you've put yourself in a sexual box. So powerful.
So one of the things that I like to talk about is in that conversation is just sexuality in the hood, right? Sexuality in the hood is very brute and brawn, raunchy and callous. There's not a lot of sensuality there. I have a problem with that. I have a problem with that so hard. You know, every man is not trying to beat it up. Every woman is not trying to get her back blown out. Everybody don't want to be choked and slapped. Like, one of the biggest issues, and one of the reasons why I created Afrosexuals was mainly because I saw people performing like porn, and they were losing sensuality. So sensuality for me is a big part of sex for me. And I was like, people were really not coming to me with that. They were like, I'm about to show you all these tricks and stuff I got. I'm like, you saw that on porn? Like, that ain't real. You don't come at me like that. You don't do that to me. Like, you know, hey. And then there was men who present like I'm, you know, big, strong, tough guy, who want to be held, who want to be coddled, who want to be touched gently, who want to have sweet and tender touch. And I'm like, and they're like, I don't know how I can tell this to my girl because she want me to just come in there and beat it up. She's looking for a certain kind of thing. And I would like to take my time and actually spend more time with her body. But she's been trained for this thing. Or vice versa. I would like to have my man spend more time on my body, touching me more, spending more time filling me up, spending more time warming me up, preparing me for him, but he want to just penetrate right off the gate. I'm like, so I was like, no. This ain't sex, y'all. This ain't it. Sexuality starts with the mind first. How are you cultivating sexuality with your partner, with your mind first? What are you saying? Are you coming to that person with love, with tenderness, with care, with honesty, with trust? Because trust is a very focal point to having excellent sex. It is a focal point. When you trust who you're with, you can explore everything. When you can't trust, a woman's body closed down to a certain point. You don't get that slippery, silky wetness that you're supposed to have. You have the natural wetness that comes with the vagina, but that's not arousal. And a lot of men don't know this. They think, well, I touch it, it's wet. No, it's not. It can be wet, but it's not ready for sex until it's sticky and tacky and slippery. That means her body is aroused internally, externally.
Yeah.
And right out the gate before the oven is hot. This is how you have vaginal tears. This is how you have vaginal lacerations, because this flower did not open for you. You did not take your time to make sure that the flower opens for you. You just driving right in. That's a disservice to the whole situation. And you're missing out. You are missing out on the unfolding that happens when sensuality is the first part of sex. Before you get to the carnal part of it, there's a whole piece that people are throwing out. You know, how do you languish in a kiss? How do you languish in an